Today, we're looking at a shimmering pink ink by PensBBS. They're number 140. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, it really does help me out for you to check out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the pink ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread. The stub was writing ridiculously dry at this point, so it's super light. We have no shading in the stub. It does show up in the extra fine and in the medium. The extra fine and medium are the same tone, obviously darker than the stub. The extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, while the medium took 13. The scrubby for both aren't really showing color variation, but it does show up in the writing, and yeah, look at how much having trouble with light again. It's just one of those constant battles. The smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a fountain pen Revolution Himalaya with a flex nib was inked up, used for day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, no spread, no shading of any kind. We do get tone variation. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the medium, and the stub is a ridiculously light tone. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry, while the medium took 21. Scrubby for both give no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is a gold line where that ink was immediately put down. We see a slight bit of a purpley tone right around that line. And then the red, which is darker on here, it's red here, but it's really pink in its writing, pushes its way all the way up. Now the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, and honestly you can't tell the difference between the two of them without having had it marked on that filter paper, so I don't expect any resistance from this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading for the stub. That is very, very light. The extra fine, which is quite a bit darker than the stub, does have spots of shading that come through. The medium, that's a little bit darker than the extra fine, also has a few spots of shading that happen. Now the extra fine took 9 seconds to dry and the medium took 15. The scrubby for both do show a little bit of color variation, and we do see that in the writing, and the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. This smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, there's a total blowout, so don't use this in a note-taking situation if you need to go back and highlight. Water is reactivating and lifting most all of this ink up off the page, while Pen Flush is lifting all of it off the page, but it did only take water to get it out of my pen. Now the 1/3 bleach solution that you're not going to need, it completely destroys it. The next writing sample is done on P. Berger paper. It's a student grade paper, so there is spots of bleed that are very deep into the page, but not through the page. I originally wanted to start this by saying there's no bleeding because none of it touches the page underneath. But it's a French rule paper and it's not really set up to use the back of the page. I don't think if you wanted to, you could with the medium, but the extra fine you probably could without any real difficulty. Now the stub, while it is very, very light in color, it has tiny little feathers in the B's. The extra fine and medium have no feathering though, and none of them have any spread. There's tone variation where the extra fine's quite a bit darker than the stub and the medium's quite a bit darker than the extra fine. The extra fine even shows some shading, while the medium does not. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry and a medium took 7. The scrubby for both show no color variation, though the extra fine does give a few darker spots. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. Just look at how hard that stub is to read there. Wow. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. PensBBS number 140 has a viscosity of 2.89, making it dangerously close to the edge, but still normal. The next writing sample is done on Vinta notebook paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. No feather, no spread, no shading for the stub. Some shading shows up for the extra fine, but none for the medium. Now the extra fine's a bit darker than the stub, while the medium's a bit darker than the extra fine. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry and medium took 8. Scrubby for both show no color variation. Little bit in the extra fine. It is there. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. PensBBS number 140 has an average dry time of 13 seconds, so it's still living on the edge of normal, but normal. The last writing sample is done on hazel notebook paper. We have no bleeding and no ghosting. Very nice Indian paper here. I wish I could get more of it, so Hazel, if you're out there, please let me know because I've tried contacting you. We have no feather, no spread, no shading for the stub. Very nice shading going on in the extra fine, but none in the medium. The extra fine is darker than the stub. It's readable here where the stub's really not readable, and the medium is much darker, more looking towards a red here. The extra fine took 3 seconds to dry while the medium took 5. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, but it only really shows up in the extra fine. Smear test says you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like PensBBS number 140, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a blue ink by Papier Plume, their Forget Me Not. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of PensBBS number 140? Getting the writing sample done was like pulling teeth. I had to keep repriming the feed. Then the day of writing, it took 3 different pens to find one that I could write with. The pen of the day was really kind of a nightmare. This is ink behaving badly, and I'm gonna have none of that. So what nib and pen are gonna give the best writing experience with this? As I said, when it came to the day of writing, I had to continuously try different pens. And I was trying pens that I know work very well for shimmering inks. So as far as a pen that's gonna work best, your guess is as good as mine. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're gonna take a look at Noodler's Concord Bream.